Welcome to Fight City Gym Talk. You are here with Eric Wallin and Brent Peterson. Let me tell you a little bit about Brent Peterson. Trained with me in my old gym, Fight City. No, it was Factum.
Factum, yep.
So that goes way back when. That was the first gym I opened. And you ended up doing a jiu-jitsu tournament with us.
Yeah.
You ended up doing an MMA fight with us.
Yep.
And this guy's a beast. Hits hard, grapples well, and has stories for days. So that's why I was like, I got to get Brent on this show to kind of go tune into the Brent show. And Brent, right out of the gate, I just want to tell people that you're, what's the terminology? You're a convicted felon?
Yep.
Okay.
I am that, amongst other things, yeah.
But now you've served your time, so what is the term now? What are they
Ex-con, maybe? I don't know.
Ex-con. There isn't like a legal, like, he did this, but he's forgiven, and he did his time.
Yeah, I mean, you're always a felon, or unless you get it expunged, so.
So what does that mean, expunged?
You can go, before a judge and file a motion to have your criminal history expunged.
Really?
But I was federal. So I'd have to go through federal court and have that done, and also through state.
Okay.
And it's a whole process. I haven't bothered with it. I don't know if I ever will.
So with what you do, now I'd imagine if you're filling out application after application, trying to get jobs and raises, and you're in the grind, you probably would want to get it expunged. If you're
my experience is that people really have been understanding. You can kind of tell the people who, if they're trying to get on the right track and stay drug-free and stuff.
Right.
So all of my employers in the past, I do an interview and I tell them that I have a felony on my record, and they've all, I can't think of a job that I haven't gotten, but also I've been self-employed for the last 10 years. So.
And that's what I was going to get at. Being self-employed, it doesn't matter much.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of freedom that comes with being self-employed. Like there's a lot of like Corona, we're not even supposed to say Corona. I'm going to say there's a lot of CVID regulations that came down that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to run and get vaccinated because of my job. I'm going to run and do this because of my job. And I remember being like, no way I'd let my job tell me to do that. There's no way I'd let my job force me to wear a mask all day. So like, I guess that's just my way of saying, like, there's a lot of freedoms that come with being self-employed. You don't have to worry about job applications, interviews. Yeah. But then on the other hand, every job's an interview, right?
Yeah.
Every time, for me, it's like I own a gym, so every time a client comes in, I'm back on the interview stage.
Yeah.
Like, how do I sell this gym to this guy?
Yeah.
So
I think that's, I've always been good at sales.
Mm-hmm.
One of my first jobs was when I was 17, I used to sell appliances and electronics at Montgomery Ward's before they went out of business. But learning to sell yourself and present yourself in a way where you can make a sale is something that I learned early on, and it served me well.
Got it. So real quick, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of this. What do you do now for work, and how are you self-employed?
So I do a couple of different things. My wife and we own 5 rentals right now.
Okay.
So we do that. And then I also am a part owner in a ArcLight Electric.
Really?
I'm an electrical contractor.
That's news to me. I didn't know that.
Oh, really? You
Yeah.
didn't? Oh, yeah. Yep. So I'm an electrical contractor. I've got 4 employees.
Holy cow.
And yeah.
From the slammer to business owner with 4 employees.
Yeah, and probably a lot more employees this year, hopefully, if things go well.
That's fantastic. Well, you said you got other businesses or other endeavors you're doing? Any money-making scams you got going on?
So one of the, when I did 7 years for armed bank robbery, and I read a bunch of books when I was in there.
I was going to ask, so I was going to give that question. So 7 years armed bank robbery.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to cut you off, but so you're in the slammer, you're reading books.
Yeah, and I decided that robbing banks wasn't ever going to make me rich, and it was high risk, and not a lot of reward in my experience. So I read a lot of books. I had good cellies when I was in there.
What's a cellie?
Guy, a cellmate.
Oh,
you know.
Okay.
And they encouraged me, to read like books on investing, and like my cellie Dominic. When I was in there, I was able to send money home. Mm-hmm. I actually did like portraits and stuff and paintings, and I was able to make a little bit of a living. Send like $100 home a month.
I know you can, when you're in prison, you can work in like the cafeteria.
I worked in the commissary, which was like probably the best job on the compound. You made the most money.
And that's where people would come in and buy chips and gum,
like the little
stuff
store
like that.
They have there. Yep.
Right. So you work there, you get a little bit of money. They have a little bit of store that you can, but you say that you could draw pictures and make money that way.
Yeah. So I did that kind of on my. So I worked in commissary, and I think they'd pay me like $200 or $300 a month, probably $250 on average.
Okay.
Working at commissary, which was super. You're balling in the joint if you're making $300 a month, And
right.
And then I'd probably make an extra like $100 a month doing portraits, like painting and drawing, or maybe even $200 a month doing portraits. And then I also did some other side. I actually did some tattoos and stuff in there. And again, that was like high risk.
What's the classic tattoo? Some guy comes out, I'm like, hey, I want my kid's name right here. What do you need to do a tattoo?
Well, the easiest tattoo to do is something that you already have a template.
Okay.
If they just have like a piece of paper
but
with
I'm
something
talking
on it.
Like you need a pen, you need some string, ink. Like what's the actual?
Oh, to do the tattoo?
What's the tools you're using?
Okay,
yeah.
So there's a few different ways you can do it. Depending on the compound you're on. So motors are an easy way. Like you can get it out of a Discman, which they don't do Discmans there anymore.
Right.
I think mostly now they do. Well, you can get a radio, or I think you can get like MP3 players in there now.
Right.
I'm not sure.
So I'm sure there's got to be someone in the Slammer that's like full time making these things.
Yeah, and in fact, the one I got, I bought.
And stuff.
Yeah, so. You get a motor. That's one way where you have a little motor that operates off of like AA batteries.
Got it.
And then what you do, you put a little the thing that spins. You put something on there where it's like off center, and then you hook a guitar string is what most people use.
Okay.
You sharpen up a guitar string and put a little loop on one end, and then they put it through a pen. And on top of the pen sits the little motor.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one way. And then you can also do a what do they call it? Like a relay switch where you run 120 volt current through it.
No kidding.
And it like vibrates, and then you just hook your guitar string on that. So that sits on top of your pen, and then you plug that one in.
Do most cells have an outlet going?
Most do, and depending on the compound you're on, sometimes like. Depending on what the warden does, sometimes the warden will be like, no more beard trimmers because everyone's making tattoo
because of
pens out of their beard trimmers, so they'll take them off the compound, or they might be like, we're covering up all the receptacles in every cell.
Yeah.
Then nobody can get a TV, which in the feds you can't get TVs anyway in your cell. But
wow, that's crazy. So that goes the tattoo. Now, when you're drawing, what were you doing? Pencil drawings?
Mainly,
just on regular paper.
Yeah. And you can order art supplies in there.
Okay.
So, and you like recreation usually has like an art room where you can keep all your paints and everything. And then there again, depending on the compound you're on, sometimes you can keep paints and stuff in your cell. Have an easel in there and whatnot.
What kind of drawings would you do? Pencil or pen?
Mostly pencil.
Pencil.
But I do anything, paint or pastel.
That's crazy. Okay, so the big question. Fight City Gym Talk, we're fighters. How often did you fight when you were in prison? Like, let's say in a 1 month period, would you be getting in scuffles, fights, breaking up fights?
Usually in my experience in prison is if you're willing to fight, you don't have to fight often.
Okay.
But if you're viewed as a pushover or somebody that can be victimized,
right,
then you might not. be willing to fight, but you're going to be getting victimized, and people are going to mess with you a lot. Yeah.
Holy crap.
Because I was willing to fight, and then when I got there, I was 19. I was 190 pounds and like 6'3".
Right.
But by the time I left, I was 6'4". I continued growing in my 20s, and then I was 265 pounds, pretty solid,
Big dude, yeah.
with my abs showing. So I was big, and I beat a number of people up in there because I trained before. I was my wrestling team captain and stuff in high school.
Nice,
so
yeah.
I was I beat up a few dudes in there, and I actually got shipped to Kentucky for breaking a few people's ribs. Got in trouble. So I was in Florence, Colorado originally, and then I was in Florence FCI, which is like a medium, but it was pretty hardcore medium. And then they shipped me to a max in McCreary, Kentucky, for breaking dudes' ribs.
So in the max, is it just harder to get a hold of people, to start fights, to pick fights?
No, really. As far as the feds go and the way they designate, they actually changed the way they designate people in like 2003 or 2004, something like that. And I was in there from 2002 to 2009.
Right.
But basically, if the older you are, the less point. There's a point system, and depending on your age and what type of crime you committed and all these things, it depends on where you and how many crime your past criminal history. Basically, they're just trying to put all the maniacs that are willing to stab somebody. They want to put all them in max, and then the people who are a little less of a maniac, they put them in medium, and then they have camps where like the white collar dudes go who don't really have any criminal history and especially none of violence.
Right. So when you went to the max, I mean, there's some hard dudes in there, I'll bet.
Yeah, but there was in the FCI in the medium too. That medium in Florence was it was right next to, it was a compound or a complex where they had the Supermax where they like Timothy McVeigh and like Noriega, like all of these super high profile prisoners. Or if you're super violent, you'll go to the ADX, and then they have the USP, which is United States Penitentiary. And then, so people will step down, they'll come down out of the ADX, and if they're good, then, after 5 years or 10 years in the A, they can go down to the USP, which is a max.
Right.
And then if they're good there for 5 years or so, then they'll put them down in a medium in the FCI. Okay. And really, you get a few more things. You get like, in a USP, a maximum, you won't have like microwaves.
Right.
But in a medium, you'll most likely have microwaves. And then I don't know if they still have weights anymore. I got out in 2009 because they passed a law where they quit getting like exercise equipment, so all the new prisons don't have weights or anything.
Really?
But the FCI I was in still had weights, and that was a big deal. A lot of dudes are trying to get to a compound with weights.
Absolutely. So you don't just, because they're probably not feeding you the best food.
Yeah, they definitely don't, and that's one of the things. Like, you want to be able to buy commissary.
Yeah. So not giving you the best food. You probably, would you say guys go to prison and get fat, or they go to prison and lose weight, or is it kind of
usually you lose weight?
Lose weight.
Usually when you first get there, unless you have like family on the outside where they're sending you money or something, you don't have money for commissary, and then when you first get there, you get a crappy job in the kitchen or something that literally pays you like $5 a month. So you don't have any money for commissary. But, your objective, now some dudes are good at doing time and like they get a program, and that's what you want. You want to get in and get a decent job or get a hustle where you can make some money. You don't have to have a job per se, but whether you're drawing or doing tats or whatever it might be, get a hustle where you can make some money, and then you can start to get like a high protein diet and stuff.
Got it. So the commissary, what's the best thing they sold at the commissary? Are we talking like gas station food, or would they have other really good things like wings or something?
Depends on the compound you're on. Okay. So some compounds might have, I've heard of having little like a little shack out at Recreation. They have like a little burger shack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you can go up and buy, if you have money on your books, you can buy a burger and stuff, which is really cool. But I don't even know if those are still around anymore. It's been a long time. And like when I was in there, it's getting more, inmates were losing more and more like privileges, nice like weights, little, hamburger shack out. Yeah, they take things away. And depending on what administration is, I mean, it comes all the way down from, as far as the feds go, from like the president, and he kind of will set the agenda, like when you go into.
So a lot of times, who's in office would weigh on your experience in prison.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've never gotten into politics much, but politically, who do you want to be in office? Not you personally. As a prisoner, do you want Democrats or Republicans to be in office?
Well, definitely most prisoners lean left. Most of them would be, would call themselves a Democrat, and usually the tough on crime comes from like the right, usually. Right. So
say like this though, like you're sitting in prison and you're like, freak, if this guy gets elected, we're going to lose this in the commissary. We're going to lose our ways. Who's more likely to restrict? Republican or Democrat?
Definitely would be Republican. Right. It's more likely. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a hard call, because then you had, like, especially in the 90s, like being tough on crime was like a political talking point back then. And then, you even saw people like Biden and Bill Clinton getting behind like tough on crime bills, 3 strike, like that sort of thing. So yeah, but it varies. But really, when as the budget gets more, or as we go more and more over budget, like the prison system definitely takes more and more of a back seat. And like you can see, when I was there, I could see the quality of the food and everything.
It started to restrict.
Dramatic. It was terrible.
They restrict more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's both sides of the coin, right? Like, and I'll just be real. As far as I'm concerned, I'm like, hey, if they don't got a budget, they don't got good commissary, they don't got good food, they don't got good weights, let me tell you my honest opinion.
I'm just going to try to stay out of prison.
I don't care.
I don't even want to go there.
I honestly don't care.
No, I mean, I got a lot of really good friends, and most of them have gotten out by now.
Yeah.
But as far as prison goes, even when I was there, you look around and you're like, oh, these a-holes, they're exactly where they belong. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was in there like, oh, we're all victims of the system. It's like, no, all those a-holes are exactly where they're supposed to be, and myself included. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so real quick, what was the wildest, craziest, most insane thing, whether it was either funny or violent or awful? What was the thing that you just maybe wake up and like, I can't believe that happened, and I saw the whole thing that happened when you were in there?
Well, there's a bunch. I don't know. I have a bunch of stories, but I can think of a few. One that's like, as far as the amount of violence that I saw, like I've got in some pretty hairy situations where, I was surrounded by a gang of like Mexicans from Mexico, like illegal aliens that were, that's where I was at in Florence. That was probably the biggest car on the compound, where like the paisas is what they're called.
Okay.
Paisanos from Mexico. And they were beefing with my buddy Tyson, and they surrounded him, and they all had knives and like locks on belts and stuff.
Right.
And that was a pretty crazy situation. But we walked away from it. We really, because we kind of bluffed, like I acted like I was going to do something, but I was just scared to death. I was like, man, I'm going to get stabbed,
Yeah.
But we were able to just kind of talk, calm everything down. Wow. That was crazy, but it didn't even turn into violence. But I've seen also like,
real quick, are they connected to the cartels? That if you know of it,
a lot of them are, and some of them you would hear about. Like my buddy,
they're not just local gangs, but they have ties to direct ties to the cartels. I guess is my question.
A lot of them do.
Okay.
But what I've seen, what that means is that like a lot of them end up dead. It's kind of crazy, and you can imagine dealing with the cartels. Like, you don't even know why. All you know is that they got out, and they dealt with the cartels before, and then they were dealing with them again, and then you would just hear word like, oh, he's gone.
Died.
You just don't even know why. You just know he got off. You know what I mean? But yeah, some of them are definitely.
Sorry, I cut you off. What was your other story?
As far as crazy stuff, I mean, one of the crazy things is funny. You see these things that happen like dominoes in there where. So a dude came down from the ADX. He was, so Sureños and Norteños are two rival gangs, and they're mainly out of California.
Uh-huh.
And in California, they have to keep them completely separated because they call it on site, where it's like if you see a rival gang member, you on site, like you have to fight no matter what, wherever you're at, whether you're in shackles or whatever you're doing. Like,
you have to go.
If you're in the same room with them or you can get to them, you have to like attack them on site. Right. And so in the feds, they usually just send those rival gangs to different compounds. Mm-hmm. And then if one of them pops up on a like if a Norteño shows up on a Sereno Ran compound, then they'll stab him or jump him, and then the administration of the prison knows not that he can't be on that compound anymore.
Right.
But they had a truce, the Norteños and the Serenos had a truce on this particular compound, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
But there was a lot more Sereno. There's like 30 or 40 Serenos on the compound, and there was only like 10 Norteños.
Got it.
But they had this like kind of an uneasy truce, you know? And this Norteño had come down, so I told you there was the ADX and then the USP, like, so you had Supermax and then the Max and then the Medium. I was in the Medium. So this dude had killed a bunch of people, this Norteño. Wow. I don't remember his name. But he was like high up shot caller for the Norteños, you know? And he was serving a life sentence for killing a bunch of Serenos.
Right.
And they, I think it was the History Channel, they did, what was that show called? They did a show on the History Channel.
Scared Straight or something? I remember.
No, it was like Gangland, I think it might have been called. Is it Gangland? Is that what it's called?
That, yeah.
Well, they got rid of the History Channel on this compound because of this episode.
Really?
So this dude, he gets a life sentence. He does like 5 years in the ADX, and then he does like 5 years in the USP. And he's doing good the whole, all the way. So then they send him, after like 10 years, he ends up in the FCI, in the Medium. And he's sitting there, and he's on the compound with his homeboys, and when he comes on the compound, he's head honcho, so he's like the shot caller now.
Yeah.
He comes on the compound, and he's calling shots for the Norteños because he's the one that, so he's on the compound for like a month or two, and this show Gangland comes on the History Channel, and he's in, I think he was in like, what was he, O Unit? Anyways, I think he was down in O Unit, and he's watching Gangland, and the Serenos are watching Gangland, and it's about him. It's about the shot caller,
Yeah.
and how he wound up doing a life sentence for killing these Serenos, right?
Yeah.
So the Serenos are like, what the F? They're like, they're seeing this dude on TV, and he's just sitting there right there next to him, you know what I mean? And so they go to the Norteños who have been on the compound, and they tell him, hey, dude, your homeboy that just showed up like a month or two ago, he's got to go. He killed a bunch of our homeboys. He can't be on the compound. And they're like, okay. And then he's their shot caller. They don't tell that to them, but they go to him and they say, hey, they told us that we got to run you off the compound. You have to leave, or else they're going to get us. They're going to get you, and they're going to get all of us. And so he told them, I'm going to get you knives. And so they got their knives.
I love prison stories.
Yeah. So they go running up in the unit of the shot caller of the Serenos. So the Norteños so every hour they'll do movement, for 10 minutes. And they open the compound for 10 minutes, like 5 minutes before the hour, and then they close it 5 minutes after the hour.
Uh-huh.
And so he sends word around all of his home, and there's only like 10 or 15 of them on the whole compound, right?
Right.
So he's like, we're going to this unit where the Sereno shot caller is, and there's like 6 or 7 Serenos that live in that unit. So 10 of these dudes are going into this unit where there's like maybe 6 to 10 Serenos.
Yeah.
But they're ready for a fight when they all have knives, and these dudes are unsuspecting. They're just sitting in their unit watching TV or in their cell or whatever, And so they go running up in the unit, and they just start chasing these dudes around, stabbing them. And So now it's a big melee, and now, so the Sureños are all unarmed, and they're getting stabbed, chased around, stabbed with, these homemade knives. And some of them definitely work better than others. I've seen a dude get stabbed with a homemade knife, and it was out of a piece of copper, like a half-inch copper tubing, you know what I mean? And he had just banged it flat and then sharpened it to a point, and sharpened the edges. And then he stabbed somebody and just, his knife bent over. But he didn't realize, so he started stabbing. This is a different incident, but.
Count your many blessings.
He's stabbing and the dude had a lock on a belt. So the dude's hitting him in the forehead. Wow! Hitting him in the forehead. And he keeps getting hit, and he's thinking he's stabbing him, right? And he eventually realizes his knife's just like bent over, and he's like getting hit. He just aborts the mission and runs out, right? That was a New Mexico car. Anyway, that's a whole different story. But some knives work better than others. So they're chasing them around, stabbing them, and one of them runs into the office of the CO's office.
Yeah.
And they have a rubber mallet that they go around and like bang on all the bars with to check, make sure nothing's been cut through or whatever, right? So they got a mallet. So this dude knows he knows that there's a mallet in the cop's office. So he runs and grabs it, and he's fending off this dude's knife attack with a mallet.
Wow.
Anyways, it was a big melee, and the Sureños definitely came out the worst for the wear. All the Sureños that were in that unit at the time all got stabbed. None of them died. But I was watching from a different unit, and I just saw them take one of so they started taking the Sureños. When it finally, they got it put down, and it was going on for a while, maybe 10 minutes they were in that unit just going buck wild. But some of the Sureños started getting taken out on stretchers and whatnot.
Wow,
and one of them just had a giant knife that was he was on his stomach on the stretcher, and the knife was just sticking out of his back. And he's just on the stretcher
It's not funny. It's not funny. Oh, wow. Okay, so you robbed a bank, 7 years in the slammer, and then you come out and because here's the thing. It'd be hard, I think coming out of jail, prison, whatever, I think it'd be so hard because most everybody would think I got to go get a $10, $15 an hour job, just later.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Initially, to get started, yeah.
And how do you climb the ladder to where you're now owning properties and multiple businesses, doing very well for yourself?
Well, that's what I love about the United States.
Yeah.
And it annoys me when I hear people cry about being victims, because I've seen this in convicts. It doesn't matter what color you are, whether you're black or white or whatever. Excuse me. But if you have an attitude, you say, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to work hard. And at some point, everybody has the opportunity where they can look, something doesn't go their way, and they can say, oh, I've been victimized. They didn't hire me because they're racist, or they were discriminating against me because I'm a felon, or whatever it might be. I might as well just give up. And if you have that attitude, then you're not going to get far,
Yeah.
But everybody I've seen who's gotten out of prison and has said, I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps, they've all been able to do it.
Yes.
And that's the great thing, too. When you look at the system, so I was mentioning to you, I read a bunch of books in there, and I read a bunch of books about finance. One of the books that I've read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right.
And he got 10 books or something, and I've read 3 or 4 of his books. But that's something that he reiterates in that book over and over, is that it's not how smart you are. It's not about even who you know or what you know. It's about your habits.
Yeah.
And if you spend less money than you earn, doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter if you're making $10 an hour or $100.
Less than you earn.
Yeah, spend less than you earn, and then invest what's left over. And then in one of his books, he tells you there's only really 4 things you should be investing your time and money in. That's your own business, or real estate, or the stock market, or intellectual property. And so those are the only things that are really going to allow you to build wealth. Where your time and money that goes into it is an investment, and it's going to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I took all of those things to heart, I said, okay, when I get out, I'm going to purchase real estate. I'm going to build my own business. And I'm going to invest in that. I invested in the stock market while I was in there and did okay. Wow. I used a method called the Can Slim method by Robert J. O'Neill. He's got a few books. He's the founder of Investors Business Daily.
Right.
And but there's different systems you can use to invest in the stock market. But really what it amounts to is you just need to invest. Get your money and invest it in something that has the ability to produce compound interest.
Absolutely. That's so cool. And the thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see a lot of people, they don't have a lot going for themselves, right? Maybe they're out of prison. I usually see it in guys that are like in their early 20s. They don't have a wife, they don't have kids, they don't have a bad job they're locked into, they don't have a lot of debt, they don't have car payments, and they kind of...
They're in a perfect position.
That's what I'm saying. When at my age, at 39, I see someone with I call it no strings attached.
Yeah.
I see someone with no strings attached, and I'm like, dude, you could be a millionaire in 5 years.
Yeah.
Because you have no strings attached.
Yeah.
But with time, my story, for instance, get married, get divorced, now I got child support. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so it just makes, you said debt to income, or make more than you spend.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard when you have child support, car payments, this, that, and the other. And one of the best things I did, this is probably 5 years ago, all the cars I owed money on, sold them.
Yeah.
And just downgraded to garbage.
Yeah, get rid of any...
They're not garbage.
Any liabilities, that's what a vehicle is a liability, so...
I just didn't need that extra payment. And so when I got rid of all this other stuff, I started seeing myself like, sure, I don't have the nicest truck. I'd love to have a nice truck, but like, I'm starting to get ahead.
Yes.
This is awesome. I'm getting ahead. And so I say that to guys a lot, like...
And that's the habit that you develop, where it's like, okay, we all wish that we could drive around in the $100,000 truck, with, and be flossing in every way, but you have to decide, like, okay, I don't need $1,000 a month truck payment.
No.
Instead, I can get a $1,000 car and just pay $1,000, and then I can take that same $1,000 that would otherwise go to a car payment, and I can invest it or do whatever I want.
I had like a $30,000 truck, and my payments were like $300 something odd dollars, and I ended up selling that. I bought a $4,000 truck, and this was just bare minimum what I needed to get like work done for the gyms. I needed a trailer to move things around, stuff like that. Bought a $4,000 truck. I had that truck paid off in like 6 months. Well, I was able to put like $1,000 down, so I only had $3,000. I had that paid off in just a few months, and I still drive that truck to this day. We're creeping up on close to 200,000 miles, but guess what? It's running.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, it's like, where you say that key word, that key phrase of make more than you spend, we get all these ropes attached in our lives where it's like, well, because of this, I have to pay that, and because of this, I have to pay that, and because I'm on parole or DUI, fines, whatever, I have to pay this, that, and the other. And people are just struggling to stay afloat.
Yeah, and at all of those points, too, you can always look and be like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just throw your hands in there and quit. Or you can do what you did and say, I need to dump these liabilities.
Cut the strings.
Yeah, cut those strings and, focus on your goals.
Right. So what would you say I want you to talk to people that are rock bottom, right? Rock bottom for a lot of reasons. Rock bottom because they're 18 out of high school and they're making minimum wage. They're rock bottom because they just got out of prison. They're rock bottom because they just kicked a drug addiction. Rock bottom because of what are you telling this person?
Well, I noticed a pattern while I was in prison that I talked to my family a lot, call them on the phone and write letters and whatnot. And I noticed that there was always an excuse for why they couldn't get out of the rut that they were in.
Right.
And
I started to see, but like they get strings on top of strings on top of strings, right?
Yeah.
I can't fix this because of this, but I can't fix that because of this, and they start tying knots around themselves.
But it's exactly like that, where they get into this pattern of what you see them doing on a daily basis, and they feel like there's nothing they can do to break out of that pattern. But when you're on the outside looking in, like I was on the inside looking out, I was in prison. I was looking, I'm like, you can do whatever you want, right? Like you could get up tomorrow and get a bus ticket and go to Florida. I'm like, I'm going to go find a job in Florida.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing stopping you. But every morning when you wake up, you look around and you feel like, oh, life is just, it's suffocating me. It's like a wet cloth that's just cut. There's nothing I can do to escape it. It's like, no, you can do whatever you want. So you first have to break out of that mental mindset that things are always going to be this way and you can't change. You can't change your habits,
Absolutely.
You need to understand that every day is a new day. Life is what you make it. And you can break all of those old habits. You can choose to do it tomorrow, and sometimes maybe it would be better to up and move to Florida or go get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you have to do. Like coming home from work and cracking a beer and turning on the TV. It's like, that's what everybody does.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but you can break out of that pattern.
But that makes you
anytime
average.
choose.
If you
exactly.
if you do what everybody else does, work 8-hour days, go home, crack open a beer, enjoy whatever your favorite sports, television shows, whatever, you become a victim of averagehood.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, I don't like being average. I like being I'm the guy that always wants to be in the mix of something exciting. And it's hard to do that when I'm sitting on my sofa watching someone else be exciting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say break out of that rut, make up your mind, figure out what your ideal life should look like, and then pursue that. But really it entails changing your habits, and that's the hardest thing for any of us to do.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about, so really what got you into crime? And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just real quick, what got you into crime?
Excuse me, that's a good question. I used to blame it on coming from a broken home, like my parents got divorced when I was 3.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's why I was a damn maniac. I was, just came from a broken home. What do you expect? But then I had kids of my own.
Right.
And one of my youngest, I'm like, this kid's a maniac like I was. He has all the same problems, So I used to think that the way we develop was more nurture rather than nature.
Yeah.
But as I get older, I'm seeing it's more nature than nurture, So some of it was just genetic. Like, I think some people are predisposed, and there are some things, I like to think that I have a higher IQ than average, but there are some things that make you more predisposed to pursue a life of crime.
Right.
And low IQ and high testosterone are 2 indicators. So I don't know if I had either one of those, but I do know I was more predisposed, and it's something I see, what scriptures would tell us are the natural man.
Right.
I see it in myself, like, oh, that's my natural man, like a mammal. I look at a dog and like, the dog's a mammal. There's certain things that are inherent to a dog and certain things that are inherent to us as mammals. And I think overcoming the natural man is something we all have to do.
Right.
We have to say, we're going to rise above our base animal instincts,
I'm glad you brought that up, because really what I wanted to get at is like, what led to a life of crime? We already talked about what transpired in prison, and what I want to kind of touch on last was kind of your spiritual journey right now. Where are you at spiritually? You mentioned the scriptures. What are your beliefs in God? Like, where do you, and what's the importance of that? Like, what's the value of having a belief in God? Scriptures, whatever.
So I'm a practicing Mormon. I don't obey all
Mormon,
of the
what's
commandments. A Mormon?
Yeah.
Member of the Church of Jesus Christ.
Oh, those, okay. I didn't know what Mormons were.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just messing with you.
But I would really call myself a Christian first and foremost. And I'm practicing, but I don't do, like, the natural man is hard to overcome. Like,
Nobody's perfect, man.
I drink too much and I fight too much, short-tempered, I get road rage a lot, I act like an idiot in a lot of ways. But I am a follower of Christ. And really I've seen what living without Christ in my life leads me to prison, where I don't have those
and that's,
I don't have those natural inhibitions. Like, I'm naturally aggressive and hard-headed and foolish. Like I rush into things. I'm brash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So really, I need Christ to teach me how to live. Really, to overcome the natural man.
And I don't want to get down on any of you atheists out there, but I will say atheists are quick to say something to the effect of, you can't prove there's a God, and quite literally in my life, I don't need one. You know what I mean? They're independently successful in whatever they do, and they might be right. They don't need God while they're here on this earth, and they can bring up their debates on whether God. But I like seeing people come from a life of kind of trauma and find security in a belief.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, whether God really exists or not, that's kind of besides the point. If this belief system helps you, like, why would you not want it?
Yeah.
So that's something I like to bring up a lot, is when people kind of go back and forth on whether they believe or don't believe, not sure what they believe, stuff like that.
Well, I think in Western civilization today, it's easy for somebody to say, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God, but all around us, we live in a Judeo-Christian society. We take these things for granted. Like the same atheist who says that lives, most likely, probably lives the Ten Commandments in his own life, or tries to, you know? And so it's easy to say, I don't believe in Christ, but it's like, well, do you live the Ten Commandments? Like, of course. It's like, okay, so you're like a walking, talking testament to Jesus Christ, but you're saying, I don't believe in Jesus Christ.
A beneficiary of it, but not.
Exactly. Everything that we do, like, we're completely immersed in Christianity without knowing it, and we're lucky because we take all of these things for granted, even just the freedoms that we enjoy. Just something like free speech, which I guess is becoming, as we get farther away from Christianity, it's becoming less of a, well, I was raised where, like, free speech is a big deal. Being able to say what you believe is a big deal, and it's something that it's so much taken for granted that people don't even, it's becoming popular now to say, I don't believe in free speech, but it's like, yeah, but you have free speech.
Yeah.
So it's easy for you to say, I don't believe in it. Yeah. You know, it's
very coincidental that a lot of tyrannical governments don't lean towards religious perspectives, right? So, like, if you want to be a tyrannical government and you want to own your people, don't give them religion.
Yeah.
And the fact
the state wants you to worship the state. They want to take the place of religion. That's what the state wants.
Yeah, absolutely, because the thing is, you can't have people, you can't have complete control over people that have a God. Because they will worship their God before they worship the state.
Yes.
All day long.
And that's what, there again, is why we're lucky to live in a Judeo-Christian society where the God that we worship is a benevolent God that gives us God-given rights like free speech and the right to pursue happiness. And you know what I mean? These things are inherent in, like, everything we do and believe and understand about how we should live.
Right.
You know?
I just think it's really cool that we have a lot of atheists among us in this American society and culture, because we're not challenged, we're not tried, and we can kind of think and play mental gymnastics on what feels good, what doesn't feel good, stuff like that. I watch a lot of documentaries on third world countries, and they go through some of the awfulest places I've ever seen, and I can't believe how people live. And the unique thing is, the people in these despicable places, and a lot of people are like, oh, they just don't know any better, but they all believe in a God.
Yeah.
And they'll embrace their problems knowing that God has a greater good. Yet we can worship whatever we want, and we're quick to turn our back on God because we don't need the comfort from God, but they don't have any comfort, so their only comfort is God.
Yeah, well, it's that pattern that we see throughout Scripture time and again, where, you know, it's kind of like good men or strong men create good times create weak men create bad times. It's kind of that whole process where when life is easy and we have whatever we want, and I see the same pattern in myself, like, you know, I've been struggling recently, kind of since COVID, because life is too easy. Like, you know, when I first got out of prison, like, I had all of these goals and I was starting from the bottom and I was hungry, you know. I wanted to work 12-hour, 18-hour days and go hard, you know, and I did that for a long time.
And invest and get working on the program.
Yeah. But now that I'm, you know, where it's like I'm making decent money and I don't want like anything that I want. I just go buy like, and it mostly revolves around like food.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I am a foodie, like I'm a connoisseur, you know.
Yeah.
And I go like, yeah, I get whatever I want whenever I want it, and that's not good for anything, for anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really, and you see, it's like I was saying, that I see that whole process in myself and in society. We're at a point now where it's like, life's been too good for too long, and we take all of our freedoms for granted. You know what I mean? We take freedom of speech for granted. All of these things we take for granted, and we don't cherish them like we should.
Yep.
And they're going to go away at some point, and then we're going to be, you know, you're going to see weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
You know?
I had my last gym just a couple months ago. I got super comfortable. My gym was doing well. I wasn't rich, but like the gym was making more than it was spending, and I got to take home a pretty good paycheck, and and it was like, it was just super comfortable. I didn't need to push my gym to do better. I mean, the money was just coming, and then all of a sudden things happened, and I had to be out, and all of a sudden I had to get a different facility.
You're scrambling.
This place cost a lot more than the other place. Well, I didn't really have that in my budget.
Yeah.
This was the only place available. So now all of a sudden I got to spend more than I was. Everything got super tight. And all of a sudden, I'm still building. You guys probably saw my video. I'm building a cage in the back. And so it's like, I was literally getting away with working like 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
It was comfortable. Everything was streamlined. I had all my
Spend time with the wife and
coaches
kids.
scheduled. I was working 6 hours a day. And now, since I've been in this gym, I've been lucky to get away with a 9-hour day.
Yeah.
Typically, we're going, honestly, I say 9-10 hour days, but literally when my phone goes off in the morning, I'm on my phone doing accounting and social media, stuff like that. And when I go home, I'll start editing this video, like, but I'll do it with my kids in my lap, stuff like that. But like, quite literally, there's only like a couple hours of my day that I'm not involved in with work some way, shape, or form. And then that's what this gym has done to me, is forced me into like a chaos of
well,
work.
it's forced you out of your comfort zone, which is when you grow, you know. And you see that in life, like, it's the same reason men's net worth usually increases the most at 2 points in their life: when they get married, and then again when they have kids.
And that's when I got married. I was comfortable with my first gym. I wasn't making any money, but I was comfortable. And my wife was like, "You've got to make more money." So I got out of my comfort zone. I started my last gym. Then again, I got out of my comfort zone. I started this gym. But every gym, I'm doing a little bit better than the one I did before.
And it's kind of like you're forced into it, and you're out of your comfort zone, and you don't like it. But then you work into a groove, and you get comfortable, and you get fat and happy. And then you're faced with a decision. You're like, do I want to continue down the road of just being fat and happy, or do I want to continue to grow and get out of my comfort zone?
And this was something I realized, and I was like, this is, if you take anything from this podcast, let it be this. The best part of Legos is not finishing and then playing with the toy that you created. That is not the best part of Legos. The best part of Legos is going through the directions and building, you know what I mean? Like separating the parts that you need. These are here, okay, I need this one, and that one, and we build it. That's the fun part. Once it's built, you can literally just take that thing, you can do two things with it. You can put it up on your shelf and worship it, or you can just go throw it away and go buy yourself a new Lego set and build another one. That's the fun part.
Or break it down and build something else out of it.
Yeah, so it's something wild, crazy.
Yeah, there's like, what's a saying? It's like, no, it's not a bar. What do they call bars in England? Pub.
Oh, yeah.
Or something. No pub's as entertaining as the road there, too, or something like that.
Right.
You know? So, like, it's the journey of life that's...
Once I realized that, I was like, man, the second I've built something and I step back and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. It's like, well, now you're lazy. What are you going to do next? And so...
And I notice about myself, that's when I get in trouble, is when I'm like...
Absolutely.
When I don't force myself, I say, okay, I need to... When you accomplish your goals and you think, okay, now I'm just going to coast, it's like, no, you have to set new goals and keep chasing them. Otherwise, you just fall into that pattern and just get fat and
I don't remember who I heard it from, but they basically says, when I die, I want my body to be tore up, tattered, and just be ready to be put in a coffin. Versus someone else that's like, you know, I was fat, I was healthy, but then all of a sudden I had a heart problem and I died, but like their joints aren't wore out. You know what I mean? Like when I die, like I want my body to be wore out. I'm doing a pretty good job of it. I've been on the operating table more than once from sports injuries, but like, Yeah, I mean, that should be all
I
of
think
our
your
goals.
last 3 fights, you broke your hand every time, didn't you?
I've only broke my hand 5 times.
I think that's what really retired you from MMA, right?
In fighting. It didn't. I don't know if you know, I fought last year MMA.
I think I went,
It was in
Did
Fierce,
did I watch? I watched you. I went
in
to
the
it.
Maverick Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't.
That's when you said you retired, didn't you?
Yeah, but I didn't break my
Said you were
hand.
done. Oh, yeah.
I
that's
broke
right.
my hand and then fought again.
Yeah.
And so my last fight, I didn't break my hand. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm wearing my body out. I'm 40 years old, and it's like, how long can I continue to do this?
Yeah.
I'm competing in a jiu-jitsu tournament this weekend.
Well, jiu-jitsu is good because you can compete forever, you know?
You get a little neck tweaks, probably is the most serious injuries.
Yeah, and you're competing against, guys your own age and your own bracket.
Right.
You'll be in your senior bracket here soon enough.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think if you get anything from this podcast, it's like, man, look what Brent did. He went from, you say you had a rough childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little hooligan, and then, my mom was, divorced a few times.
Right. So he goes
It
from
was rough, but it was probably mostly my own fault.
rough childhood, troublemaker, prison, basically kind of getting your education in prison. Then after prison, learning some key principles, make more than you spend, learning to invest, and now how long have you been out of prison now? You said 2009 or something?
Yeah, so I've been out I guess going on 13 years.
So the thing is, if you don't have anything going for you, you're 13 years from being in a similar position of Brent with multiple investment properties and owning your own business and kind of being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Yeah.
But even then, you're not done, because if you just stop then, you're just going to work yourself into fat laziness.
Yeah.
So
For
back
me,
on
it's like drinking. If I don't do anything, if I don't have any goals, and it's like I end up drinking too much and,
right.
making the wife and kids unhappy.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work. I have to focus on goals and keep working towards them, or else I just stagnate and go backwards.
Absolutely. Your problems are good things. Cut those strings. Make more money than you spend. Set goals. Invest. Bada bing, bada boom. And I'm not there yet either. I'm struggling my butt off. But I was just telling Brent before the podcast, I'm like, 5 years, Brent. Give me 5 years, and you watch. Now that means in 5 years, hopefully, I'm fat, I'm rich, I'm lazy, and I'm creating my own little personal problems. But I want to be there.
Yeah. Well, I was just telling you.
It might be another 10 years after that before my new goals. But yeah.
The economy is, kind of turned around now. We're in a recession, and real estate prices were going up and up and up, and now they're going down. But I started investing in 2010, like a year after I got out.
Right.
And I started flipping homes, which I wish I would have just bought and rented, which I've ended up doing. And your net worth grows so much better if you're just doing rentals rather than trying to flip.
I had another guy on a podcast said the exact same thing. He'd flipped a few homes.
Yeah.
He's like, I wish I would have never flipped. He's like, I wish I would have just held on to them.
Yeah.
So.
And then when it gets, as the market continues to go down, it'll be easier and easier to buy homes.
Yeah.
And when it starts to get easy and everyone's still scared because they're not sure that if it's reached the bottom, buy homes. Like, I wish I could have bought 100 homes in Denver in 2010, but I was scared to because I was a new, and they were so easy to buy and everything was seller finance.
But you can only do that if you make more than you spend.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think most people will be watching this, and I've listened to a lot of real estate investors myself and been like, it's easy, just buy whatever, buy. But you can't unless you financially.
After you buy a couple, it gets way easier because. So I started out buying my own home, and then I would fix it up and sell it, and then did that a few times. But once you get a home with some equity in it, then it's like you can pull some of that equity out through like a second mortgage, or you can just refinance, or there's a number of ways to do it, HELOC or something. But it's easy then to come up with down payments for more properties because you're just using the equity that you already have in these properties. You're just pulling a little bit out and putting it down on another property.
Got it.
It's just, it's a lot easier after you got 2 or 3 properties.
Absolutely.
You just have to get started You know?
That's crazy. Well, Brent, I'm so glad you came on. I think I'm now motivated. You know, I got to create problems. I got to work harder. I got to get things going. Got my 5-year goals. I'm glad you were able to kind of share your experiences. Is there anything else you want to say before we cut this thing off?
I mean, I could blow V8 all night, but maybe we'll just come back and do another one sometime.
We should, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming on, Brent. I really appreciate
pleasure.
it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned. We'll get another good podcast coming up sometime soon.